What's going on, everybody? This is your man, Dr. John C. Turner, aka the Professor JT, and we are live with the exclusive LinkedIn talk about the SCOTUS decision of overturning affirmative action and student loans here in the United States of America. Now, this is a very important conversation, and we have a double dose of doctors coming to you today. And we're going to start off with these amazing heavy hitters here. Dr. Michelle Rencher, Dr. Harry Drayton, and Dr. Wesley Payne McClendon. Good morning to you, Dr. McClendon, all the way out there in Australia. Shout out to my frat, as this is conclave time for Kappa Alpha Psi.
Absolutely.
To all my brothers out there. So, we, without further ado, want to introduce these great doctors. As we are gentlemen on the Doc Chat show, we'll start out with the lady from Bahamas, the good doctor, Dr. Michelle Rencher. Welcome to the Doc Chat show. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so very much for the warm welcome and, of course, for being here. I am, as you mentioned, Dr. Michelle. But first of all, I'm Dr. Michelle Simone Rencher. I am Michelle. First name after my father. Simone is my middle name after the late, great truth teller Nina Simone, which is what I intend to do tonight. And of course, my last name is Rencher. I live here in Middle Tennessee, but I am from the Bahamian diaspora. The Commonwealth of the Bahamas, 50 years strong, is my homeland. And I am excited to be a part of this discussion because I have experienced affirmative action, even as a little kid, all the way through my academic journey until today.
Tell us where you got your doctorate degree from and what's it in.
Yes, I got my degree in organizational leadership from Columbia International University. Undergrad was Franklin University in engineering. Master's degree from WGU here in Tennessee. A master's degree in strategy. And of course, as I said, an organizational leadership PhD from Columbia International University in Columbia, South Carolina.
Phenomenal. Dr. Harry Drayton, we appreciate you, my brother. Welcome to the Doc Chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. My name is Dr. Harry Drayton, and I'm from New York, but I'm currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a doctorate degree from the California University of Pennsylvania in criminal justice, Doctor of Criminal Justice. My background's been in the world of criminal justice. It's just a pleasure to be here.
We appreciate that. And my frat brother, all the way in Australia right now. Good morning to you, sir. We appreciate you jumping on. Dr. Wesley Payne McClendon, welcome to the Doc Chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. Once again, I have to jump in on my esteemed colleagues. I'm from the south side of Chicago, but I was baptized in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
And we can barely kind of hear you. You're kind of in and out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
You got buds in. Sometimes if you switch to your other, sometimes your mic could be a little bit stronger, but it's a little low.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try and turn it up a bit if I can.
Let's see here. We want to make sure we hear everything.
Is that better?
That is better. That was better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was saying that from the south side of Chicago, but I was baptized in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And specific to this conversation, my grandfather went to Meharry Medical School. But because he was from a small town in southern Illinois, he was actually not able to practice medicine. And ended up working on a steel mill. And so, again, because of this conversation that we're having in terms of opportunities for people of color and getting advanced degrees and so on and so forth, I thought that was important to mention. I went to Penn State University and I have a degree in human resource management and industrial relations.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and play with it a little bit. So kind of get closer to the mic a little bit. Let me make sure, because you're still kind of real in and out.
So I think what I may do is just change to a different format here in terms of my technology, if you will.
Okay, we're working with you. Let's do it.
Okay.
Make sure we got you there. Yeah. So all of our wonderful guests, we appreciate you, everybody that's chiming in. You know how we do here on the Doc Chat. We got to make sure we hear everything these great doctors are saying. So we want to make sure everybody gets lined up, everybody's good. That's how we do, because we got some of the greatest minds here on the show. They're already showing us love. We appreciate it. Of course, they're showing love to the Bahamas. We got Dr. Michelle Simone on. Come on now. We got to show her some love. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Some of our great regulars. Yeah, we the doctors know we got to make sure we're here. She will let you know quick too. I can't hear you, so we want to make sure we do. We got my good friend Dr. Rods. He's on the show, always showing love, and we appreciate that. Hey, Dr. James, can't wait to get you on in about an hour. You're gonna be on, and you're gonna come with that power. We already know. We appreciate it. Appreciate you so much. So we want to make sure everybody that comes on the Doc Chat gets their time, gets the love that they deserve. That's why we have the doctors split up, and that's why they're going to come with some amazing, amazing things today. So let's make sure we got Dr. Wesley. Try us again. Let me see.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is. He's there. That's wonderful. All right. All right. So we're going to jump into it. We are doctors, folks. And when you are in our position, nothing is more important than making sure you share research and facts. So I'm going to start off where we are in this situation. So SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States of America, did a turn that changed and shocked the world with a vote that took away affirmative action process in higher education. Now, we have to realize, especially when they do these decisions, it's only 2 cases they really need. 2 cases that went to them that was powerful enough to eliminate all affirmative action. For the most part, all of it for colleges and universities. As you see, Chief Justice John Roberts, of course, he's from that conservative majority. The vote was, I want to believe, was it 7-2? I want to believe, somewhere around there. But basically, it wasn't close. Was not close. And as you read here, in his opinion, the Harvard and UNC admissions programs cannot be reconciled with guarantees of equal protection clause. Both programs lack sufficiently focused and measurable objectives warranting the use of race, unavoidably employ race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and lack meaningful endpoints. Very, very trying situation. Okay. Now you go into, what does this mean? What does this all mean? Make sure we got this right. Now that affirmative action is gone, there's an overall effect that's starting to kick in, and it's huge. Is DEI next? That's a question that's had. And even looking, it says the logic is impeccable. If racial preferences are unconstitutional, surely diversity, equity, and inclusion must be as well. You can see the effect that it's starting to have. As soon as this came down, you had Hollywood executives, DEI leaders, either left or they were dismissed from their role. Now you're looking at Hollywood is on strike right now for a lot of the things that is happening and that is going on. We're looking at affirmative action as a whole, seeing that people now are just saying, we're just going to do our own thing. We're not going to worry about what they say. We're not going to worry about anything. We want to make sure we have in place our rules, our own regulations to make sure that students of color, LGBTQ, all these individuals from diverse backgrounds get their fair shake when it comes to getting into college. But could this be a plus to HBCUs? And as we look and think about these things, and this particular article had some very, very good points in looking at how HBCUs could truly benefit from this, because it's basically saying, if you don't want us at your school, there are schools in place that definitely do. And so we also looked at now, if we're going to take out affirmative action, you have to take out legacy admission. You have to have the conversation. You cannot continue to allow individuals coming to your schools just the fact because daddy, grandpa, all those individuals came in, but you're going to sit here and deny students of color access now because, oh, we can't have affirmative action to help you get in, but your legacy can help you get in. Okay. And of course, we're going to dab into student loans a little bit. We want to make sure we talk about that. We want to make sure that individuals know that, give me a second. Yes, this happened. A lot of people were hurt by this because they were told, not, oh, it's going to come. They were told they were going to get 20,000, 10,000 taken off. Some of us got the emails saying this has happened. Some of us turned in forms saying this was going to happen, and then it did not happen. And let me make sure I put this into context. $20,000, say you were paying $200 a month. $20,000 would have been anywhere from 15 to 20 years of payments off. Just that $20,000 we'd have got it, and we did not get it. People did not get it. Now, this vote did go 6-3. And we have to look and see that there was some other student loan legislation that Biden rolled out. But unfortunately, it only hits individuals who had paid student loans over 20 years. So basically, if you had paid student loans over 20 years, then those loans got taken out. So this is the conversation we want to have today. Once again, this is the Doc Chat. I'm your man, Dr. John C. Turner, the Professor JT. Got Dr. Drayton, got Dr. Rencher. We have the wonderful Dr. Wesley. He'll be right back. He just wanted to make sure we got the sound right, but we're all good. We have this first set of doctors that's on now. We're going to have another set that's going to come on in about 45 minutes. But I got to give these two doctors the opportunity to speak on what I just showed. We're going to start with affirmative action. Dr. Rencher, what in the world is going on, and what are your thoughts?
I think my first initial thought when I saw the ruling by SCOTUS was that this basically confirmed what I often believed, was that a lot of persons on this side of the planet, for some reason, did not believe persons who look like me, sound like me, think like me, deserve to be in university. I come from a place where there is a lot of education in the Bahamas, but there are often few classroom seats, very, very few. And this is why myself and many others opted to migrate to the US, because there's more opportunities for academics, more opportunities to study different diversity of subjects. When I began my foray into affirmative action, first of all, if we can go backwards, affirmative action was initially signed into bill by then President Kennedy in 1961. 10 years later is when I was born. My father began his journey into affirmative action by enrolling in Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. My mother and myself soon followed him. At that time, I think I may have been 2, maybe 3 years old. There was a pilot program at Florida Atlantic University for students to enroll their pre-K students. At that time, again, I was 2, 3 years old, into a pilot program where you would be taught by student teachers, and it was a very inclusive program. I was the only person of color at Florida Atlantic University when I was 2, maybe 3 years old. Got photographs of me being, again, a toddler on a university campus going to a pre-K program. Flashback years later, when I opted to migrate to finish off my bachelor's degree. I began my studies at the then College of the Bahamas, but I eventually migrated into Franklin University in Columbus, Ohio. I just read an article a while back that talked about the benefits of this ruling, how this ruling impacts students who studied STEM the most. Because typically when you think about the ban, a lot of people were, and still are, very hurt. It's denying education, and was typically most people's thoughts. But as a student of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the rigors of any STEM program are there. Whether you opt to, or whether you try to get into an MIT, any university in Georgia, whether you go to any mainstream university, or if, like myself, you went to a university that was not as competitive. Engineering is engineering. Science is science. I mean, I know there are some persons who are really gung-ho about Harvard, and then there are those who are gung-ho about Howard. I went to Franklin University. Most people have never even heard of that university. The reason why I chose that school was because it was economically feasible for me and my family.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about universities, whether you are an undergraduate student, grad school, PhD, or whether you are currently a middle school parent or a high school parent, when you're thinking about university, the ban on affirmative action tells us a number of things. For me, it lets us know that you must be prepared for the rigors of any university campus. You must find a university environment that is desirous of you being there. You must be available to the university campus. Now, some persons would say automatically, persons who look like me should automatically go to HBCUs. But there are conversations that perhaps in the ACU environment, there may not be space for you, because we can't all go to an HBCU. There's not even enough space. Depending on where you live, depending on where you come from, there may not be enough space. And so sometimes we have to go to predominantly a PWI, predominantly white institution. But in those majority institutions, we must also find space where, as your comment just said, go where you're not tolerated, but where you are celebrated. When I walked on Franklin University campus, I didn't feel as if I was in a university campus in the middle of Central Ohio. I felt as if they wanted me and all of me. By the time I graduated, by the time I enrolled, I was the first Bahamian student. By the time I left that university, trust and believe, I left 5 students in my space.
Wow.
There were 5 who were following right behind me, because when I went home on Christmas break, I talked about how welcomed I felt at the university campus. Now, yes, I received affirmative action because I was a Black woman of the Afro-Caribbean diaspora in the middle of Central Ohio. There is no community in that environment. So I had to get in and fit in. In that environment, I had to learn very quickly to adjust to the environment, but also to allow the university to adjust to me. And so by the time I graduated, there were 5 students who were from the Bahamas, but there was also my face on the billboard as you drove towards the campus, because I'm going to find a way for you to recognize and see my voice and see my face and recognize that I am here for the conversation. And so affirmative action is a huge blow to many people, but it's also an opportunity for you to reimagine what could be different. There are many universities. You don't have to think about a UNC or Harvard University. There are universities all over this country. My husband often laughs and says, Bahamians will go anywhere. Yes, we will, because we're going to go and we're going to graduate too.
Nice.
We're going to go to the most obscure university campuses, and we will graduate. They will see us at graduation. We're going to raise our hand in every single class, and we will finish, because we also recognize that coming from where we come from, my degree is not just a signature. It's not just behind my name or in front of my name. It's not just letters. My degree represents, or should I say my degrees represent, years and decades and generations in my family specifically that they were denied information. They were denied access. And so affirmative action does not say I can't go. It simply means I have to reimagine the pathway, because if I'm intended to go, I will get there.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Folks, I'm telling you, that's the leadoff hitter of these amazing doctors coming on here on the Doc Chat. We've got Dr. Rencher, Dr. Drayton, Dr. McClendon. And I'm telling you, thank you for the comments. Thank you for everybody viewing. This is an important conversation. If you know somebody ain't watching, you better tell them to tune in, because, boy, we are taking off right now. Dr. Hari Drayton, as a man that is working at a HBCU, what are your reactions, your thoughts, everything that is happening with affirmative action right now? We give you about a good 4 minutes. Give me everything you got, Doc.
Thank you. I think that this is a good look for, or good opportunities for the HBCU. I also feel that it's unfortunate that they would to take someone's choice away. I think that if you go to HBCU, you should go by choice. Right? You should go by choice, not because your choice was taken away from you. So I think that the Supreme Court got this one wrong, and that they are going to be on the not so great side of history in this. It's an unfortunate thing when you take out race conscious college admission, and to have a justice who had benefited from affirmative actions himself, and to vote against it. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like really, really, I'm like, when I read it, I'm thinking, was I surprised? No. Was I surprised? No. Yeah. Was I, but still hurt by it. But to answer your question, with respect to HBCU, I think now we're probably going to see greater admissions, and not by choice, but just by circumstance, that choices have been taken away. I mean, we all, sometimes either knowingly or unknowingly, have been a recipient from affirmative action.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. And I think it's a great thing. It's an unfortunate thing that that part of it had been taken away. I remember reading that they said, 20 years from now, we could probably do away with it. But it still lends for racism, because that's what this is about on its face. That's what it's about.
Wow. Absolutely phenomenal. We got the doctors that are tuning in, dropping knowledge. Dr. Randolph, we appreciate you. She is not lying. Did they really mean it? That's the thing. Why do we seem to have these temporary legislations, it seems like, that come through? And now it's, I think you guys are fine now. I think you guys are okay. It's interesting.
Yeah. And then you have this other thing, right? You have this other thing, as if a person, when you are a recipient of affirmative action, somehow you had a curve or an edge that you don't belong there, or you just didn't qualify based on your skills, based on your knowledge, when in fact that is totally wrong. It's not like they still go according to so many other things. So it's not just because you're Black, you're admitted. I mean, you still have to have the grades, and your race may get you there, but it's not going to keep you there.
That's good. That's good right there. Absolutely powerful. Dr. McClendon, once again, good morning all the way in Australia. So your thoughts, and I mean, you got the up out of here. So this still has to touch your heart in some way. What are your thoughts on affirmative action, and what did this ruling mean?
Well, I guess two things. And I didn't come here from America. I came here via the UK. And so my work actually had me living in Saudi Arabia and in Dubai on the Muslim weekends, and in London looking after my team. And so I subsequently came here to run Ernst & Young's Melbourne practice. But let me throw a different lens on this problem. One of the things that I've realized is that, and as an African American, we do this. I'm not sure if Clarence Thomas is the best example, because he got into Holy Cross through affirmative action. He got into Yale via affirmative action. So let's be clear about his path before we begin to throw shade. One of the things that we have to realize is that it's important for us, not doing the Clarence Thomas, which effectively is using the ladder to get up and then pulling it up with you and not allowing any others to climb as well. I think one of the things that we need to do is to we used to talk about each one teach one. I think there's a similar case to be made here. So while I live in Australia, I'm still involved with Penn State alumni. So they have what's called a Global Careers Institute. So they fly me back to State College to talk to folks there, right? But I think we need to go even further. You all may or may not be familiar with a guy by the name of Brendan Short. He played linebacker at Penn State and then went on to a stellar career for the New York Giants. He's part of this Global Careers Institute as well. So I think it's important for us not only to go back and get some folks, but get on the boards of those universities and institutions so we can actually be in control of who they bring on board. Now, whether that be teachers or students, but I think this turns the table on us to be far more engaged in the university going forward so that, we can't say, I got mine, I'm gone, but we actually need to say, what more can I do to ensure my path, as Dr. Richard described, increases the pool from which they're choosing people that gain entrance into the university. It's no mistake. I got into it's called the Industrial Labor Relations program at Cornell, and they actually call it I Love to Read. But I got into that program, but I didn't go because they didn't give me enough money. I don't know about you, but it's pretty expensive to go to graduate school.
That's right.
So the only reason I went to Penn State and not Cornell was because I got a Button-Waller doctoral fellowship.
Wow.
And again, as competitive as any other doctoral fellowship, you have to have the grades to get in. And to Dr. Drayton's point, you got to maintain those grades to stay in.
That's right.
And I got a 4.0, got a whole bunch of stuff on the back. Those aren't degrees. Those are academic associations as part of my work at Penn State.
Wow.
And that fellowship allowed me, as I would have mentioned previously, I took 8 classes each semester. And was able to work both in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, in the business school in management and organization, and in the ed school in training and development.
Wow.
But I would not have had that opportunity to take 8 courses a semester, get a master's and PhD in 3 years, and a 4.0.
Wow.
Right. So it's the Button-Waller scholarship that allowed me to do that. And yes, that is affirmative action. Raise my hand, proud to be part of that. But those opportunities would not have existed had it not been for that fellowship. So it's important for us to say, well, what can I do to open more doors for people of color to make the same journey that I took? As a fellow, but also create more and more doors for folks to go through, because they're trying to, as you know, close those doors,
right,
and turn it into legacy and athletes when, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. But I think to close this door just means that we need to change our strategy and our tactical operations.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. This is the Doc Chat Show. Got Dr. Rencher, Dr. Drayton, Dr. McClendon. This is part 1 of 2 coming up, folks. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We appreciate so much the comments, the viewers. We appreciate these doctors' insights. And Dr. McClendon did very well. He went into what we're going to go into next, solutions. We have to give solutions. Individuals like us that have these doctorate degrees, that's what we were mainly had the opportunity to earn them for, to provide solutions. So we're going to go to Dr. Rencher. As you heard Dr. McClendon, it probably wouldn't have happened, his doctoral journey, if it wasn't for somebody blocking it. But as we know, sometimes a block blessing ends up opening the door for a whole bigger blessing. And so what are your solutions to affirmative action if you have, which you do, children in school, now something that might have been set for them isn't set for them? So what are some other options for now these students looking to go to school?
I think, as I said a little earlier, I think we're going to have to find university campuses that are receptive to us. My first foray into undergrad was, unfortunately, at Spelman College. That was where I wanted to go, partly because I had watched A Different World. So that was on my whole, everybody's list. But they actually had a joint engineering program with Georgia Tech. But as an international student, they did not accept me and give me enough money. Now, as an international student, many international students right now are scratching their heads. Their parents are trying to figure out, what do I do when my children are of the African diaspora? If African American kids can't get into schools, what are we going to do? And so my suggestion at that point is then, again, go back to the drawing board. If your first or your number one or your number two or your number five school says no, you need to start looking for universities that may have a different requirement for admissions. And as we are here saying, Dr. Whitfield, delay does not mean denial. My foray into my PhD journey was because of my 3 different attempts, not because I didn't have the chops academically, but because I didn't have the money. Money is a huge factor for many students.
Yeah.
And so I would say go ahead and try and find a university environment that is definitely more inclusive, that is welcoming, especially for international students. If you are of the African diaspora, absolutely start doing your research. Find out, who do you know in that community. There may be another Bahamian or another Caribbean student in that community. Find out exactly who was there and what can they tell you about that environment. Dr. McClendon also mentioned about the importance of us being invested, becoming more engaged in our alma maters. While I haven't been as engaged in my PhD undergrad, in my undergrad school, I am a part of their conversation. And this is my second year in a row, actually, speaking in the Leadership Summit, making certain that the undergrad and master's degree students see representation.
Beautiful.
Because again, when I left undergrad, it was many years ago, and I don't know exactly what the university dynamic is right now. But when I spoke last year, I had so many students reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, I was so happy to see you, because there was nobody else of color who was speaking that day. And I thought, how incredible is this? Like, it's the same city as Ohio State University, or should I say the Ohio State University, but it's not the Ohio State University. It's Franklin University. So even if you've never heard of Franklin University's motto is, we make it happen. And had it not been for Franklin University, I would have still been in Nassau, Bahamas, working in a jewelry store. No shade to a jewelry store, but I had to work at a jewelry store for 1 calendar year to save every single penny and tip to be able to afford, because as an international student, most people don't even recognize is that most international students, unless you are completely exceptional, they may save a seat for you. But in order for you to get that student visa, you must have your year's tuition in the bank.
Wow.
Before they even allow you to release to get your student visa, for you to get on the airplane, for you to begin studying. So most international students keep the university doors open. We don't qualify for Pell Grants and loans. So your parents have to be extremely wealthy, which is not my case. My parents were civil servants. And so I had to go ahead and work a number of years before I was even allowed access on an airplane to fly into Franklin University. Again, Spelman didn't offer me the money, but had it not been for a rerouted plan of action, I would not be able to now speak on Franklin University stage and welcome their undergraduate and their master's program students and let them know that this is what happens when you're motivated. Wow. This is what happens when other persons may say no, but somebody said yes. And sometimes you just need one yes.
That's it.
And so as students out there, my solution to them would be, if you get into a situation and you feel as if the university environment is not as welcoming as you'd like for it to be, you can find alternatives. There's too many campuses in any one city in this country for you not to go if that is your desire to go. And if you start out going and something happens along the way, there are other universities, there are HBCUs, there are smaller universities. Maybe you don't need to go to a large university. Perhaps you should go to a smaller university that has more hugs and more approaches that you might need.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We appreciate you showing the love, the tuning in. We appreciate y'all, Dr. Anthony. We appreciate you. Hey, facts are being thrown out. Dr. Lori, we appreciate you. Hey, it's great to meet you as well. We thank you all, everybody, for tuning in here to the Doc Chat right now. We're going to go to Dr. Drayton with solutions. What are some solutions to this affirmative action legislation, situation, whatever you want to call it. What we gonna do, man? Like, what are we gonna do?
We're gonna continue to press on, because you have to knock on some door, and some door will open. Even with this Supreme Court ruling, I just hope that this does not. The colleges and universities still retain a right to recruit where they want to recruit, and to accept who they want to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that they can see past that and to allow the qualified candidates, because diversity matters, representation matters. And that if they don't, what does that say?
Come on.
Another thing is, if they're going to make it that hard for you to get in, they're going to make it harder for you to get out.
Tweet that. Right. Put that somewhere, folks. Put it in threads.
If it's that hard for me to get in, I don't know if I want to be there, because how do I get out then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But go somewhere where they want you and where you want to be, and you'll make it.
That's powerful. Absolutely powerful. Dr. McClendon, we're going to go to you, and we're going to go ahead and throw that even student loan point in there, as we want to make sure we hit that topic too. What were your thoughts on that, and what solutions do you have as we look at those student loan legislation that came down that broke the hearts of so many?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Let me just start by reiterating what has been said here, and actually talk about the STEM program that Dr. Renshaw was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in terms of changing the lens through which we view this problem, I think we need to also think about going further back. So not just starting, in high school, but actually getting people involved in all sorts of opportunities in grammar school, so that people can increase the pathway and the reach of a lot of these opportunities at a younger level. So when they look at university and even beyond, it's not something new to them. It's not a new concept, but it's just as I would say, act like you belong here. Don't act like this is something new. This is something that you are deserving of, and so we should look at it in that context.
Mm-hmm.
I think the student loan piece is an interesting one, because I think it bumps up against kind of a political position, and I don't want to get too much into politics, but I think when we look at the PPP loans and the extent to which a lot of the I would call them wealthy legislators had their loans forgiven in the millions of dollars in some cases. And we're talking about a very few people comparatively who need to get, in terms of the amount, we're talking about a very few thousands of dollars that we're talking about providing some exceptions for. I just think it's the psyche of a lot of these people to look at our problems when they're someone else's as a problem, but when they're their own, this is an avenue for a solution. So again, when they're looking at, most of the people that are being talked about getting their loans forgiven are people that actually are middle class. If you think about buying a home and the extent to which you have to have, I tell people often, if you're trying to buy a home, don't buy a car first, right? Buy the home first. And then, it's not about what you drive, but where you park, right? So the idea of focusing on a home, if you got a loan, a university loan sitting out there, that's going to work against you. So, in the same way we're thinking about, affirmative action and getting us into university, we'll also need to get financial planning into the mix as well. There's always money for people who do well academically, right?
Wow.
So even though I got a fellowship, I was still out hustling, right? I was still consulting to the government. I was teaching a class on racism and sexism. I was a faculty advisor. I took a whole floor of MLK floor and went in there and did movies, talking about a lot of different issues on a Monday night. So I was hustling because I think I got like $1,500 a month, and most of that went towards rent. Right. So we need to make sure that we're giving people the tools and skills and approach earlier on in their career so that they can figure out and be exposed to different options. So Dr. Drayton's point around, you can get in, but you can't get out. And it's about choice, so that I would tell my nephew that the decisions we make today determine the opportunities that we have and are exposed to tomorrow.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful. We just getting started, folks, here on the Doc Chat Show. Dr. McClendon, Dr. Rencher, and Dr. Drayton, they dropping these. Y'all are over here quoting them. We appreciate that. Hey, make sure you give them they change on that now. Don't run off and take that. That is their intellectual property right there. I'm telling you, they need to put that on the t-shirt. And shout out my guy Ty over here, Crazy Tees in Richmond. Got me that good old The Doc Chat t-shirt. I'm telling you, the brand is going big. Shout out to my guy Mike King, who had me on the radio here in Richmond. I'm telling you, man, the Doc Chat is blowing up. We've had folks, of course, out here in Australia. We've had folks from Germany. We've had folks from London, of course, from the Bahamas. I'm just saying, folks everywhere tuning into the show, and we appreciate it so very much. It's the doctors that are moving and making the movement happen. We appreciate them. I'm telling you, folks are still tuning in. Our good friend Marlon Jones, she's been on the show. We appreciate her. Oh, look who's jumping in. Dr. Young, we appreciate you. We appreciate you jumping in as well. So we got a few minutes left. We want to make sure we get these good doctors their space because this is the double doctor episode. We got 3 more great doctors that are coming our way. So make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to jump it back to Dr. Rencher and kind of give us your student loan perspectives, some solutions. What did you think when you saw that? Did it affect somebody you know? Did it affect you? And what are some solutions now that we need to put into place to be able to help now that we know in October, them jokers are going to kick back in?
I think 2 things, as Dr. McClendon said, financial literacy is the most important thing. Whenever you think about student loans, you think about persons, first of all, who have the capacity to even apply for it. My first 2 degrees, I was an international student. I didn't have the access, even the ability to apply for student loans. So it wasn't until my PhD journey that I even understand what a Pell Grant was. And it was like, okay, this is a whole lot to even understand. But I think for parents and for students themselves, or for recent graduates who are trying to struggle through understanding what the laws have to say and what's going to happen, as you said, come October, I think the most important thing is to take a deep breath, is to breathe, to recognize that our ancestors, whether they were recent ancestors or a long time ago, we are their wildest dreams. And even if your wildest dreams comes with a huge financial tax break or a huge financial cost, I think they can't take the information out your head. And so, like Dr. McClendon says, many of us who are professionals in one space and have had other hustles on the side, this may be the season for you to start getting a hustle until you bring them scores down. Go ahead and get that hustle up to it. Build that hustle, get on that grind, and make certain that you are using every possible skill you have. You can have a doctorate degree, a master's, or even a bachelor's or an associate's degree, and still have to pay for it. And so why not find an opportunity to benefit your community, teach somebody, speak, learn something new, go ahead and share your information, but ultimately get paid for it, obviously. But I think it's important to go ahead and get your hustle on so that you can be more fiscally responsible, and that ultimately your learning was not in vain.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Dr. Drayton, we're looking at these student loans. A lot of folks did not get any money taken off. Now, if you put a PSLF, you might have got some. Now, some individuals have gotten money taken out, but the majority of people are getting nothing. What are your thoughts? What are your solutions?
Heartbreaking. Especially when we look at how this government has spent money and wasted so much money on other things. My concern is that people who are getting ready to go to undergraduate school and graduate school will become discouraged. Right? That's my concern, that they will become discouraged and not pursue higher education. And maybe it's time for companies to offer more scholarships.
Oh, okay.
Right? Companies to offer more job. These people go, they work. A lot of people are working, and you're underpaying them anyway. Give some incentives on these jobs to defray those costs.
That's good. Yeah.
Because every little bit helps. I mean, I remember in graduate school, getting my master's, I worked for Delta at the time. And I remember walking past the table, and now mind you, I was already a retired correction officer, right? And also owning a real estate company. And they had a scholarship. And I said, I'm not going to get anything. And I just kept walking. So the lady called me back, and she said, oh, you should fill it out. You're going to get something. And I thought, I'll do it. And lo and behold, I got 2 scholarships through Delta.
Wow.
Delta Airlines.
Wow.
Right? So every little bit helps. But I think these employers need to start investing in their employees.
That's good.
And really put the money where your mouth is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Dr. Drake dropping the ideas here, folks. I'm telling you, y'all better be paying attention, because we need these folks to get into school. And what is the frustration to know you have put your kid K through 12 education? They did everything right. And to tell them, sorry, there's not enough money for you to go to school. Frustrating, absolutely frustrating. We appreciate everybody dropping these dimes. They dropping the knowledge. I'm telling you, hey, this is the frustration that's happening. That's why we got the docs to talk about what's going on. Dr. McClendon, your thoughts kind of wrapping up, thinking about what is next, what should come next, whether it's the student loans, whether it's affirmative action. What are your final thoughts?
So I'll jump back into my professional expertise. One of the things that I've instilled in a lot of the organizations that I've worked in is this idea of leaders working with individuals outside of their direct report or their business unit to grab someone from another part of the business to mentor them for the purpose of promoting them into another part of the business, right? So you're pulling someone that you don't know from a different part of the business, working with them, developing them, and then getting them to be promoted again in a different part of the business, not your own. Mm-hmm. I think that philosophy is really important now. So what we should be doing, in addition to our own children and relatives and those types of things, we need to find kids that we can grab a hold of and mentor, right? And it just doesn't have to be one, it could be more than one, but we need to take them and be responsible for facilitating their development.
Nice.
But I'm gonna go one step further. Many of us either work for ourselves, which I do, as well as corporations, but we want to actually ask our organizations to start a fund, an education fund. I know they're trying to take away diversity, equity, inclusion, and all those types of things, but I think if each one of us went to our presidents and CEOs and managing directors and made a proposal for them to, in the name of the organization, to start a fund for people of color, deserving people of color, given the reach and network that we have, we could probably pull together a fair bit of cash. So I don't think we have to look at this as the end of, but more the beginning of something different and even better. Every door that closes creates another opportunity for us. And I think we need to look at it from that optimistic perspective and not have the woe is me, doom and gloom that we tend to jump onto, because it's easy, because it means I can relax now. I can't do it, right? Mm-hmm. But instead, we need to work harder. We need to work smarter to ensure that we're engaging a broader network of professionals in their capacity as either at the top of the business or anywhere. But we need to make the ask, and we need to make the ask en masse.
Love it. Absolutely love it. This is, of course, the Doc Chat, folks. Dr. Renshaw, Dr. Drayton, Dr. McClendon coming at the Double Doctor episode. Dr. Renshaw, let folks know where they can find you. Give us your final thoughts. whatever's on your heart, what would you tell this next generation of students? Because at the end of the day, both of these legislations that came down affected them. What would you tell the next generation to do?
I would tell my children, nieces, nephews, and even a stranger that I see on any schoolyard that if it is your desire to enter higher education beyond high school, first of all, make certain that you are ready. There's nothing like being unprepared, being ill-prepared for any environment. But if you are ready for the academic rigors and you are ready to walk into a new space, to take up that space, make certain that you are ready. Make certain that even if the organization, the campus environment is not exactly this as you would like it to be when you are applying for the actual school, make certain that you are ready to make a shift. As we heard just a little earlier, delay is not denial. We don't all have to go to undergrad at 18 or 19 years old. Maybe we should take a chance and work a little bit longer, but ultimately make certain that you are ready. When I left Nassau, Bahamas, I was ready for the rigors of Franklin University. When I left Franklin University, I had a 20-year span where I worked as an engineer before I was ready for the rigors of graduate school. When I started my PhD program, I was ready for the rigors of it. I didn't go back to back to back immediately. I would have loved to, but that was not the journey. That wasn't the part of the plan. And so make certain that your journey is your journey. And make certain that when you are prepared to enter any academic environment, whatever the school looks like, whether it's a 2-year program, a 9-year program, whatever the length of time, make certain that you and your family are ready, that you have your support mechanism, that when you call back home, they are there to support you. Recognize that there are persons around the planet who are ready to support you, but you have to go ahead and reach out to those persons. And most of all, be ready to go ahead and ask questions and listen for the response and be prepared for exactly what's coming to you. And if you are meant to go to undergrad, if you're meant to go on further, doors will be open for you, but you must be ready to go ahead and do the work. I agree that universities have to align themselves with organizations to partner for scholarships. I agree that opportunities are afforded to persons who are ready. But most importantly, Dr. McClendon is living someplace else. I am living someplace else. If you can't find the right school here, there are schools all over the planet. So I suggest that you go ahead and get ready. And when the time comes for you to get into that university program or undergraduate program, whatever school it's going to be, make certain that you are ready for the rigors and just put your head down and do the work.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Dr. Michelle Frencher, everybody. Dr. Harry Drayton, where can folks find you? And final thoughts on this discussion.
Be not discouraged. Both of these rulings have great impacts on Black and Brown people. We're in a place today, and COVID has shown us that anything is possible. And in the advance of online education, we have more schools at our availability now. So you don't have to go to a school necessarily in your town or in your country. Search. Mm-hmm. Continue to knock. Don't give up your dreams, because today it's the affirmative action and the student. Tomorrow will be something else. Mm-hmm. So we can't get sidetracked and we can't get caught up into those things. Just continue to search. And if it's something that you really want to do, you'll find a way. You'll work it out. And to the second question, I can be found at Dr. Hari Drayton on LinkedIn or on my website just to find updates of what I'm doing. It's at drhari.com.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And go back to Dr. Frencher real quick. Where can we find you? Just real quick.
You can find me on LinkedIn also, Dr. Michelle Simone Frencher. You can find me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
Love it. And Dr. Clinton, where can folks find you, and final thoughts?
You can find me at on LinkedIn, Wesley Payne McClendon. I'm on Twitter at Black Doc, and just got into Threads and Instagram on Black Doc as well.
Oh, cool.
Just one thing I want to make sure people understand: when you get a fellowship or scholarship or a student loan, you still got to hustle, right? Mm-hmm. So the hustle doesn't leave you, right? You leave the hustle, but the hustle doesn't leave. It's the path that people need to take. So when I was an undergrad, I worked 3 and 4 jobs, everything from a janitor at a house of ill repute to, working as at a restaurant, turning tables. So, and I worked in an orchestra pit, because I studied music composition and orchestration. So my point is, you got to make sure you keep that hustle in you, because, right now, I'm doing multiple things, because the hustle, I didn't leave it behind, right? I'm still hustling. And the moment you kind of go, I'm done, I've made it, is probably the day that somebody takes over what you thought you had. So with student loans, with fellowships and the like, you got to keep on hustling. Like even as a doctoral student, I was still hustling. So you cannot leave the hustle behind. You always got to hustle. You got to work harder than everybody around you. So embrace your hustle. Embrace your inner hustle.
I love it. I love it. That's Dr. Michelle Rencher, Dr. Hari Drayton, Dr. Wesley Payne McClendon. Now it is time to introduce. Let's bring them in. Oh, man, this is a beautiful sight, folks. Our next set of doctors that are coming in. Thank you to the first set. We appreciate y'all so very much. And thank y'all for y'all insights. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
We're going to keep it on moving, and we'll be in touch with y'all real soon. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it. All right. Once again, folks, let me go ahead. And we have one more. She'll come in a second. No worries. No worries. Amazing first start to this amazing conversation. We appreciate y'all so much checking out the Doc Chat. Now, without further ado, it's time to go to doctors number 2. Awesome. Have Dr. Anaya James. We have Dr. Lawrence Davis, and very, very soon we'll have the wonderful Dr. Here she comes. She's coming in. Candicia Randolph, who is here on this evening. We appreciate them so much. If you thought the group 1 was tough, this one's coming a lot tougher right now, because we got heavy hitters and they are going to bring the noise. This is the Doc Chat, the bonus episode, the SCOTUS, affirmative action, student loans. What does it mean? What's going on? These doctors are about to bring it to you as we go into hour 2. Now, we're going to go ahead and start with Dr. James, the narrative doctor. We're going to have her introduce herself. Let us know where you got your doctorate degree. Let us know what it was in. Let us know what you're doing now. Welcome once again to the Doc Chat.
Hello. It is always a pleasure being here on the Doc Chat. I am Dr. Anaya James. I started my undergraduate journey at Virginia Union University, product of a proud HBCU. I went on and did my master's in speech communication, rhetorical and performance studies in Hofstra University, and then got my PhD in communication from Liberty University. Currently, I serve in the military, and I do a lot of public affairs. I'm the host of a show that will begin airing in September called Just Narrative. I'm working on publishing my first book. So kind of deviating away from that world of academia and really diving into narrative. I started with my own narrative and said, you know what? I'm always preaching about living in truth and speaking truth, and it's time I start sharing my own. So this was prime, because just listening to everything that's going on out here in the world and listening to what we're talking about here tonight, narrative needs to be told. We got some deep conversation ahead of us right now. There's a lot that we need to talk about. And I'll tell you, I tuned in from the beginning of this show, and I agree with a lot, but there's a lot of viewpoints that I have that may not be as as well received.
No, I mean, everything is fair game here on the Doc Chat, and that's why we appreciate you being on, and we're going to jump into it. We definitely are. Dr. Candicia Randolph, We appreciate you coming on. Let us know a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the Doc Chat Show once again.
Good evening, everyone, and to those who are on the other side of the globe, good morning. First of all, I didn't realize I was on here with Dr. James and with the cleanup doctor, as he called himself the last time. Nevertheless, I am Dr. Condecia Randolph, a native as well as just like Dr. McClendon of the south side of Chicago, with the same high school as Michelle Obama. That's my little fun fact these days. Academically, I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Missouri, hence my t-shirt, since we were talking about schools and student loans today. I have a master's degree in public administration with a specialization in public policy. I have a master's of arts degree from Regent University Law School in law, specializing in human rights and administrative and regulatory law. And I also hold a doctorate in strategic leadership. I am a leadership and organizational development specialist. I am also a multi-published author, both in academic journals, in a book that was released 3 months ago entitled The Black American Church Leadership Dispensation and Challenges, in addition to a textbook chapter that I currently have in publication, and another project that's in the works. So that's me in a nutshell.
We love it. We appreciate you being on. And our military mind that's on the show, Dr. Lawrence Davis. We appreciate you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome back to the Doc Chat Show.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Once again, I am back again on the Doc Chat, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. As John alluded to, I am a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Army. I've had over 30-something plus years of military background, enlisted and officer. I got my degrees. I started my education at the University of Florida, and I matriculated from there to Valdosta State University, where I got my bachelor's, and from there, Troy University and Walden University, respectively, where I got my master's and my doctorate in public policy. Right now, as a retired officer, I'm probably about as busy as I was when I was working on active duty, but I'm coaching, and I'm an adjunct professor at a couple of institutions, and I coach the high schools cross country and track teams, and I'm also venturing into some business ventures with the SBA, Small Business Administration. And it is a pleasure for me to be on board the Doc Chat tonight for this engaging topic of conversation. And I look forward to what the rest of the docs have to impart to us today.
For sure. We appreciate you, Ron, tuning in. Chicago all up in this thing. I'm just saying, I'm just from Indianapolis, right down the street. But hey, you always got to show Chi-Town love. And he always wants to give love for the service. We got 2 military folks on here. We appreciate y'all so much. Definitely do. So we're going to jump right into it. Dr. James, affirmative action, your thoughts, and just kind of where are you at with all this right now?
Okay, so let me start by saying I'm a product of an HBCU. I'm a firm believer that I need to be in spaces where, like we said in the first half, I'm celebrated, not just tolerated. So me attending an HBCU was my choice, was my goal, was my dream. Most of the schools I applied to were HBCUs. I don't think there were any that weren't. Yeah, so they were pretty much all HBCUs. With that being said, I don't think that we should be forced into that situation either. I think that young people should have their own direction and their own mode of where they want to go educationally, and it shouldn't be dictated simply because, hey, I can't fit in this space because there's no quota for me to fit in this space. There's no leverage for me to get in and shine in this space. I have I have 5 children, and 2 of which have reached that college age. And so far, none have even applied to HBCUs because they're not either offering what they are looking for, or they're not. Let me correct that. The second one did. He applied to several.
Okay.
Problem is, they were not giving him what the PWIs gave him. He applied, got accepted, and he can't afford it, right? So PWs are throwing money at him. HBCUs aren't. But then here we go now. We're in a place where this is the space that readily wants to accept them, but I can't afford it,
Wow.
right? So where does that leave us? Where does that leave our young Black, um, you know, students? Where does that leave them to be able to branch out and do all the great things that we know that they're capable of doing?
Yeah.
We're talking about affirmative action and how there's no place for that, right? Because everything is so different now. There's no place for it. Well, if there's no place for affirmative action, then we're saying there's no place for diversity and inclusion. Then we're saying there's no place for, equal opportunity, because we don't need it anymore, right? But we still have platforms for legacy clauses.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to eradicate all of it, if we're going to eradicate some of it, we need to eradicate all of it, basically.
Wow. Absolutely powerful. Absolutely powerful. Dr. Randolph, where are we in this affirmative action thing? Because I'm telling you, where we're sitting right now is not in a good space, and it doesn't feel very good. So what are your thoughts?
Where are we? So to be very honest, and anyone who's tuned into the previous chat that I did, I don't hold a lot of punches. Where we are isn't largely or vastly different than where we were prior to the decision. Now, that being said, as someone who, my undergrad degree is in both business and political science, and I have a master's degree. And so for me, the understanding of the ruling, the understanding of the legal implications hits a little differently than someone who may or may not have that knowledge. Effectively, what I attend too many meetings. What Dr. James just said is correct, is that if you don't have programs such as affirmative action, which create pipelines of opportunity that then matriculate and become diversity, then it means you don't want DEI, you don't want DEIA or IDEA, you don't want DEIB. And so that's one place where we are. The comment that Dr. James made in terms of we shouldn't be pushed into a corner, and I heard another one of the participants say that in the first hour, is that without the legalized standard of affirmative action, it remediates the choice factor of the decision. Now, am I saying that HBCUs or predominantly Black institutions, for instance, Howard's an HBCU, Chicago State in Illinois in Chicago is a predominantly Black institution. Two different classifications, but many of the same issues and the same mission and goals, looking at educating specifically Black people and even other marginalized communities and lower income communities. But again, back to Dr. James's point of making that option, I didn't go to an HBCU. It's not because I wasn't smart enough. It's not because I wasn't woke. I've always been very astute, in tune, and aligned with who I am, whose I am, and the path from which I came. Enslavement is not, I didn't become enlightened after receiving some degree or stepping on a college campus. I chose to attend the University of Missouri for a couple of reasons. One reason was because at the time that I graduate, there were only 132 schools of all the colleges and universities in America that had accredited business programs, and I was a business major. So that was one factor. The second factor was when it came to the HBCU versus PWI discussion, and I had that conversation with my parents, or at least my mother, I didn't feel the necessity to attend an HBCU for this point. My perspective as a 17, 18-year-old child was the world is not comprised of solely Black people. And so for me to emerge myself in that environment, to me, created a what false narrative. Because when I go into that real world, the narrative tells me everybody in that room is not Black. In fact, at the University of Missouri Columbia, when a lot of those freshman classes you go into, especially in the lecture halls, it was a running joke, but it was the truth. We counted the number of Black people in the class, and maybe after the first couple of sessions, you kind of congregated in the back to try to find a source of community for one another. And so effectively, again, it does push us in the corner. It does take away some choices. It's disparaging because ultimately it's disparaging, but it's also hypocritical. It reaffirms what I typed in the chat during the last session, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Well, that was really never meant for us, okay? And so again, you have the quote Clarence Thomases who have ascended the ladder and now they've chopped it down. But I just don't believe that in his mind, he thinks he's Black. He's something different other than Black. Like he's not the same Black we are. And so nevertheless, we look at now that we're here, where does it take us, so to speak? And I don't want to speak, beyond this particular segment time allotment, but where we are is pressing a greater demand on our HBCUs and predominantly Black institutions who ultimately, if all of us who went to PWIs begin to flock to those HBCUs and those predominantly Black institutions next year, their infrastructure cannot handle it. They don't have the financial resources to handle it, and they don't have the staffing to handle it. Thus, what happens is that ultimately, if we do not find workarounds, if these universities do not engage in programs to actively recruit us to continue to provide those scholarships, we're going to lose that attrition rate. The attrition rate of our children to higher education will become dwindled because we will not have that physical space for them. Let's also look at one other point that I wanted to mention when we talk about HBUs versus PWIs. Now that certain schools want to remove that caveat, for instance, the University of Missouri, the President Choi put out an announcement last week or following the decision that they will immediately stop using race to predicate decisions on admission. Okay, fine. That's what the Supreme Court says. Don't agree with it, but that's what they said. But then the thing that really put the nail in the coffin for me, we're also going to stop offering race-based scholarships. The Supreme Court didn't tell you could no longer offer a race-based scholarship. It told you that you should not or could not use race in your decision. Whereas places like the Sun-Times reported this morning, Chicago Sun-Times reported that the Art Institute of Chicago will continue to use preferential race as a component of its applications. And the way they're doing it does not derelict from the decision of the Supreme Court, because the model they put in place over 10 years ago was to begin to recruit from a wider pipeline. And they went into CPS schools and began a bridge program with them. The students who are in that school, according to the article, the vast majority of students in CPS, the article said over 90%, are minority students. And so now their composition is 60% minority and only 40% majority. And that includes their students internationally as well as domestically. And so that's where we are. We have to do the same thing that was done to us for years to keep us out of an unjust system, to legally keep us out of an unjust system. And then when it became legalized, finding other ways. So they said, okay, well, you can vote. Well, we're going to give you a SOAP test. We're going to give you a literacy test. Did you pay your poll taxes, right? They came up with ways to somehow disenfranchise us that were legal. So these schools, these universities, these scholarship boards are going to have to find equally as vigorous ways to offer opportunity to all students within the realm of what's legal.
Wow. This is what we do here on the Doc Chat, folks. We drop fire bombs everywhere. That is what this is. Some of the greatest minds are right here on the Doc Chat Show. We appreciate these perspectives. We appreciate you, Reverend Mike. Good evening to you. We appreciate everybody tuning in here on the Doc Chat. This is the second round of this amazing fight we got going on, talking about this conversation of SCOTUS and their decision of affirmative action and student loans. We got Dr. James, Dr. Randolph, and now we throw the mic over to Dr. Davis. Affirmative action, what's going on in your mind? What was your response when you saw it? What are you thinking right now?
Well, to be honest, when the decision actually was announced, I think in my mind, just as in many of other listeners and everyone else that's listening in on this chat, we already knew what the decision was going to be. You know, it was not like we were surprised. It didn't make us feel any better.
Right.
But I think if we're honest with ourselves, we already knew what that decision was going to be.
Right.
Now, after the decision, has anything changed? No. The reality is that nothing has changed for us. We're still going to have to do everything that we were doing before to get into college. And when we get into college, we're going to have to be better, the same as what we've always been. So the reality of affirmative action going away is really not going to change anything for us. Now, I fully prepared and came on with the intent of bashing and beating Clarence Thomas over the head. But the first set of doctors have done a very good job of actually doing that. So I don't want to continue beating the brother. Excuse me. And let me say, I need to catch myself on that. Dr. Randolph actually kind of mentioned it earlier when she said, well, he's a different kind of brother. But I hesitate to give him the moniker of brother. And here I go beating this guy upside the head. But I decided instead of really trying to show how Clarence Thomas benefited from affirmative action, what I really want to do now is come up with some solutions. And I've come up with 10 solutions. But before I go into those solutions, let me be clear.
Yeah.
Although I'm not going to bash Clarence Thomas, if you attended school in any institution in the last 43 years, and the reason I say 43 to 44 years is because if you recall, even though the affirmative action was signed in 1965, it was slow walked.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay. It was slow walked. My oldest sister was one of those that actually integrated the schools in Florida. Now we're talking about Florida now. Okay. So she actually was part of the inaugural class that integrated our high school in 1976.
Wow.
Okay. Y'all think about that. Yeah. Think about that now. We're talking the late 70s before schools were solely completely integrated. Okay. They slow walked it. And when they slow walked it, what they did was they actually took away the ability of predominantly Black administrators, Black teachers, Black faculty, Black staff instructing our students and preparing them for life. And we put that into the hands of white folks. White folks who were doing it only simply because it was their job. They were getting, they needed a job. They had to get paid. So now all of a sudden, the only thing changed for them is they have Black kids in their classrooms. And some of them even left the teaching career field simply because of that. Which is a good thing, the good riddance. but the idea that anyone that attended school at any institution, especially white institutions, in the last 43 to 44 years, if you enrolled, you benefited from affirmative action, because those institutions were now being encouraged to have a more diverse and inclusive academic atmosphere and experience for students.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what affirmative action was intended to do. Affirmative, basically, initially, it was about jobs and careers in government and at various levels, and then it matriculated into education. Okay, and Lyndon Baines Johnson actually followed up on the initial affirmative action legislation, which was done by our guy John F. Kennedy. But LBJ, the only thing that he did with affirmative action was add sex to it.
Wow.
Now remember, you said that it was said that Clarence Thomas said that the Constitution was colorblind. The Constitution is not colorblind. The Constitution sees white.
Right.
That's the only color that the Constitution sees.
Yeah.
And that color is white men.
Right.
Yeah.
Only white men. The founding fathers, these brothers were so, and let me
Dr. Davis now.
Yeah, we got a lot of show. We got a lot of show.
Messed up the word brothers. We can no longer. We got to be real careful from henceforth when we say brothers, because you can't lump us all in the same category now. When you talk about black men, Clarence Thomas is a black man, but he is not black.
I'm telling you.
So he done messed up our catchphrase for each other.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just sitting here like, wow, we can no longer be called brothers, because if we call ourselves brothers, we include Clarence Thomas. And he definitely is not my kind of brother.
Oh, let's see.
Wow. Okay, but I digress.
well, let's keep it moving. Let
me keep moving.
Yeah,
because my next when it comes back around to me again, Dr. Turner, what I want to do is go further into these solutions that I have, and also kind of go into the legacy of affirmative action. And I kind of hinted at it by saying that if you enrolled in college in the last 43, 44 years, you are benefiting from the legacy of affirmative action. Everybody, including Clarence Thomas.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'll go further into some solutions that I crafted while I was listening to those outstanding doctors a little earlier.
Hey, that's what we're here for on the Doc Chat Show. It's Dr. Davis, Dr. James, Dr. Randolph, and they are pushing us right into our next topic. Before we go into those solutions, though, we want to make sure we give thoughts on the other legislation that came down, which is student loans. So go to Dr. James. A few minutes, thoughts on that particular decision. What were your thoughts?
I think that a lot of it has to do with this ideology that we're trying to perpetuate. And I think that if we don't know better, we can't do better, right? Mm-hmm. It's like Maya Angelou said, if you know better, you do better. If you don't know better, though, you can't do better. I think that we have to deal with the larger problem, right? And if we deal with the larger problem, which is the systematic racism in this country, which is the self-hate that's perpetuated within the BIPOC community, then we can deal with all this other stuff. Clarence Thomas is not a stranger to his behavior. We know a lot of brothers and sisters that are like the Clarence Thomases of the world, right? There's a lot of self-hate there, right? You are a byproduct of affirmative action, yet still you despise it, right? You would not be where you are without it, but you despise it, and therefore you make it very difficult for anybody else coming up through those ranks, right? You're not doing that. Let me turn around and put a hand back. So we have situations where someone is saying, hey, let's eradicate some of the student loans. Well, what does that do for our Black and brown population? What does that do for our BIPOC community to eradicate or lessen student loans by such a great majority? We now have students coming out of college with a leg up. I remember probably the most profound moment for me was that I cannot remember his name. He did a Morehouse. He was the Morehouse speaker for that year.
Robert Smith.
Yes, and he said, you know what? I'm going to challenge all alum to do what I'm doing right now. I'm going to pay for everyone's student loans that's graduating this year. What he did was systematically eradicate that financial burden of young Black men in debt coming out of college. That was thousands of young Black men coming out of college already debt free with a college education. Do you know how powerful that is that you just did in that one swoop of a gesture? This is the things that is being stopped from us. These are the avenues that we're not able to travel anymore because of decisions like this. Right? The affirmative action, the student loan, it's all tied into a greater plan. We are a law. Everything about us is a law. And once we realize that and stop dancing around that, this is why I love talking with Dr. Randolph whenever she's on, because we don't dance, right? It's this is what it is, black and white. Let's be real. Let's have real conversation. We are a law. You are so right, Dr. Davis. We were never included in that Constitution because at that point in time, we were commodity. We were like cattle.
Property. Yeah.
The law is not for property. It's for people. You cannot treat people the way that you treated people if you consider them people.
Wow.
Right? So if you are property, now I can treat you as such. I can treat you without my conscience being affected by it. And we say, okay, nothing's changed. Dr. Davis, a lot has changed because of this. Because of this law, I don't know if you guys have been watching the news lately, but if you look at Florida's new laws that they're passing, the teaching of African American studies, have we looked at that? You want to teach my kids what? That the things that slaves learned was beneficial to them? What are we saying? What are we saying?
Yeah.
And we think that this is going to be a positive outcome. These are the next generations. If this is what they're being taught, then take out the fact that they can't get into certain schools, and take out the fact that they can't have critical race theory, take out the fact that they can't have diversity inclusion. What are we creating? All of it is going to be an issue. And we're looking at pieces, bits and pieces. We're not looking at what this whole thing, this culmination of activities is going to create. We are doubling backwards rapidly. And before we know it, we're going to end up in a position where we're going to be like, how did we get here? How did we get here? Because you know that saying, you push me 2 steps forward to take me 10 steps back. Man, we have been thrown hundreds of steps back, and we don't even see what's going on because it's so many different things happening all at once. It's like, don't look here. Definitely don't look here. You know what I'm saying? And by the time you wake up, how do we end up here?
Powerful stuff. I'll tell you. These doctors are throwing it down. They come up with the real. That's why we have them here on the Doc Chat today. Dr. Davis, Dr. James, and we gonna slingshot it over to Dr. Randolph. Looking at these student loans, a lot of people could have benefited. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like too many people are that thought they were. What are your thoughts?
I have several thoughts, both in relation to that direct question, as well as to address some of the issues that both Dr. Davis and Dr. James have mentioned.
Right.
in reference to, I'll put it this way. If I were to title this particular response segment, I would call it The Dying of Whiteness. There's a book entitled The Dying of Whiteness, and there's a thought paradigm and a scholastic paradigm as well. And essentially what it is, very simplistically, is the scarcity, okay, is the white people being afraid as they look at population numbers in the US. They see themselves and they see a definitive end marker of when they will no longer be the racial majority.
Yes.
But I want you to understand what I just said. People who came in and stole the land from the indigenous nations, a US government who stole the Osage Nation's land in Oklahoma, and it was perpetuated by the FBI head J. Edgar Hoover to plot to kill multiple Native Americans of the Osage Nation. And it's a book called, I'll reach over and grab it in a minute so you all know I'm not crazy. I did a book talk for it a few years ago. Nevertheless, that same land that was stolen from them, they're now letting Native American nations buy it back and at some reduced cost. So you stole the land from them, you enslaved me to build the infrastructure of this nation. And now 250, 60 years later, you're seeing that before you reach that 300-year mark, you'll no longer be the racial majority. And so then to answer your question and to you address the other issues such as systemic racism, what then happens in the minds of entitled white people in Sambos such as Clarence Thomas, and I want to be very clear, I want everyone to hear me, he is not what we typically refer to him as. He's a Sambo. He's not an Uncle Tom. The narrative has been incorrect about that for years, and it makes me itch. Uncle Tom actually protected the slaves. It was Sambo who treated them worse and disparagingly in order to make the master and the overseer happy, okay? So now we have these Black people, and to address your issue, Dr. Davis, he's our color, but he is not our kind. And so no, he is not our brethren by any means, okay? So those persons who have become disillusioned, and I don't call it self-hate, Dr. James, I don't think he hates himself at all. Personally, it's us who are hating because when people like him have a grandeur of delusion. You have deluded yourself. You're sociopathically, you have a cognitive dissonance about who you are. Here, you benefited from affirmative action. Here, you didn't have to take out student loans because you benefited from affirmative action, because somebody marched for your behind, because somebody died for your behind, because Mamie Till Mobley had to bury her 14-year-old son, so that you have the right to sit in a seat that's not worthy to have succeeded Thurgood Marshall. And you have psychopathically created a cognitive dissonance between who you were and were born to be and that white dude who sits next to you, who's laughing at you at the social clubs, okay? Because he sees who you are for you and you do not. Therefore, the issue with student loans is multi-tiered. It's not just the racial and ethnic component. It is also the financial logistics of an entire generations. Millennials and Gen Z, and it took me a long time to be comfortable saying I'm a millennial because I don't like a lot of those characteristics of these people. But those persons who are in my age bracket, so you're looking at people born between 1980 and 1996, have a lower home ownership rate because of the student loan debt. Now, here's why it's so important to understand that for several reasons. One, home ownership creates generational wealth. Home ownership helps you. That's how a lot of white folks pay for their kids to go to school. They have these homes that have been passed down to them for centuries, and businesses and land that has been passed down for years. And so their kids don't need student loans. They take out a second mortgage. They use the equity that's in their home, or they take an equity line of credit for their business. Yep. And so by disallowing a forgiveness of a certain amount of money monetarily for student loan perpetuates the racism of generational wealth as well as classism. Therefore, in 2035, 2040, 2050, when they are no longer the majority by race, they will continue to hold the majority of wealth. So let's understand how it doesn't just affect us today, but what the end game is going to be. Because see, John Roberts will be dead by then. Clarence Thomas will be dead by then. But what they are attempting to ensure is that their grandchildren, who may be the ethnic and racial minority, can still be the financial composite. Furthermore, yes, ma'am. Consider the idea of the color blindness of the Constitution, as the Chief Justice stated, as Dr. Davis said, and Dr. James mentioned it too. I actually just had this conversation 2 hours before we started this show. Not only is that just a bald-faced lie, as my daddy would say, that you put in the opinion that the Constitution should and is colorblind. When the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, and those of you all who are not constitutional scholars, that was the amendment. The 13th eradicated physical chattel slavery and bondage. Side note, did not eradicate all slavery, because you can still imprison people and make them work for menial wages, which is still a form of slavery. There's legislation that is being proposed to eradicate that now. Nevertheless, you go back to 1866 when these amendments were ratified. You had the 14th Amendment, which is the Equal Protection Amendment. When those 3 civil liberties amendments were added to the Constitution, those wonderful white men, as it was stated, did not go back and remove from the previous articles where it stated that those who were of the African ancestry, which is us, were 3/5 human. And understand that by leaving that in there today, understand that Mississippi just dissolved within the last 20 years an anti-lynching law saying it was illegal to lynch people. Understand that just 2 years ago, trying to get an Emmett Till anti-lynching law through the federal government makes it not colorblind. Not to mention the Voting Rights Act as well as the Civil Rights Act are the only 2 pieces of legislation that have to be continually reaffirmed in order to stay laws, and that directly benefit Black and brown people. And so to say where we're going with the student loans, what we're attempting to do by saying it's illegal and it was a stretch of his executive power, well, when did number 45 not stretch his executive power, right? Nobody shut him down. The closest we got to it was Twitter, just putting his account on hold. And so essentially what we're attempting to do by both disregarding affirmative action and by disavowing student loan debt is we're saying, well, we see you coming for us in terms of numbers, but we'll make sure we keep the money here. And so I just wanted any young people who are out there, any of you all who have kids, real quickly, I'm not going to say I didn't get a scholarship. That's a lie. I did get a diversity scholarship to go to the University of Missouri, which they're now nixing. So if anybody is listening, Moon Choi, thank you very much. It allowed me to pay in-state tuition plus gave me additional money each semester, right? Wouldn't have gone if I didn't have that. But when it came to grad school and those other 3 degrees that I have, I didn't have a fellowship. And even in undergrad, I still had student loans. And one of the disservices that my community did to me was try to convince me, if you have to take out a student loan, it's not worth it. No, sir. No, ma'am. Quit telling our kids that. I'm not saying that we should encumber ourselves with debt. But if a student loan is the only way for you to get ahead, the statistics and the numbers show the wealth that is created post obtaining a baccalaureate, master's, doctorate, and other professional and terminal degrees. So do not let the fear that they have now put on us, because that's the other thing, it's a fear-mongering tactic. Don't allow the fear that they are attempting to deflect and project on us make you afraid to get that degree by any means necessary.
That's right.
By any means necessary.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm telling you right now, folks, this is what we do here on the Doc Chat. We appreciate everybody still tuning in with us, still checking us out. We're having a conversation that is one for the ages. We appreciate these great doctors as we're in round 2 of our double doctor episode on SCOTUS decision on affirmative action and to student loans. Dr. Davis, let's get to those solutions, my guy. Let's get to what you got. I want to hear about it. Go right into it.
Well, these solutions are based primarily on me actually assessing and evaluating exactly where we have to go and what we have to do moving forward. First of all, in my mind, we accept the fact that the reality of affirmative action being done away. We knew it was coming anyway, so we have to really accept that reality. Minorities and people of color, we're going to have to do what we have done in the past to be able to achieve our educational goals. And like Dr. Richard said earlier, we got to get our hustle on. So get your hustle on. Figure out, how we can get those the monies for our educational goals. Like Dr. Randolph said, if you have to get along, then get along. But I also have something in mind with respect to that. Well, all right. The second thing, continue to pursue higher education. And one of those solutions is the 529 loan, 5 funds. Those are where you actually start saving the money for your grandchildren, your children at an early age. Set up those 529 accounts. Start putting $50, $100 a month away and put that away. That will help alleviate the need for loans.
That's correct.
Scholarships. That's the third thing. If you've got the grades, apply for every scholarship that you can. That's free money out there. Apply for these scholarships. But now you have to do the academic work and do the rigor in order to qualify for those scholarships. So be prepared. So you have to start preparing early. And that includes number 4, which is like, hey, you need to start as early as kindergarten with our kids. As soon as you can, you need to plant that seed in them. Like Dr. Randolph said, the potential for having a standard of living and earning wages that are commensurate with having an education is far greater than not having an education. HBCUs. Before affirmative action, guess where we got educated at?
Exactly.
Okay, so and that primarily is what I meant when when I said that it doesn't really change what we do. I mean, there are some changes like was mentioned earlier, but go back to what we were, the HBCUs. All right, invest back into our own schools and into our communities. And I'm in the process of establishing a learning center with my church. That is another option for us, is to help continue to educate the youth and the people in our communities by establishing learning centers. Because if you establish your own learning center, then you determine exactly what is going to be taught in that learning center and who's going to be doing the teaching, and making sure that if you want to prepare a kid or a young person for college and they need to have history taught, real history taught, true history taught. If you're teaching it in your learning center, then they're going to really learn our true history.
That's good.
And I'm in Florida, so we need as many learning centers. um, number 7, we got to look at alternatives. You know, I value going to a college or a university or even a junior college. Okay, but there's also trade schools, and if you go to a trade school, learn the craft, learn the skill, and then open up your own business. Okay, uh, we lost a lot when schools were segregated, but if we kind of go back and really get back to what made us and our academic system so good. I recall there's a school in my hometown called Richardson High School. That was the black high school that everybody went to in my community. And again, it was that school that once was everything was desegregated. That last graduating class, the students that would have graduated, left that school around 1976. And it wasn't maybe 2 or 3 years after they turned it into a middle school. They turned it into a middle school. And then, after I think about 2 or 3 years, they tore the school down.
Wow.
The only thing they left was the gym,
Wow.
but they tore down that school. So a part of our heritage and our history was lost with the desegregation. And I'm saying that we may have to relook at that and make sure that we position ourselves in a position whereby we can make sure that we are bridging the academic gap uh, by making sure that when you have schools and you have governors and you have politicians out there who are trying to uh, whitewash and teach false history, then we are prepared to bridge that gap and to teach our kids and their kids the truth. They need to know the history just as well as our children need to know the true history of the United States. And again, Dr. Drayna, earlier, he mentioned online education. I think that is another option for us as well. You know, I did a lot of my doctoral degree via online. And I've taken a lot of courses and a lot of classwork, and I've taught classes online. And nothing beats in person, but if that is the only way or the option that is best suited for you to get that degree, then go online, get the degree.
Good.
And then I think 10 is prepare for the reality of a predominantly, we need to be able to prepare our kids to go into a predominantly white working environment and be able to adapt to what it's like in that environment, because you're going to be dealing with and working with people who don't look like you, who may have certain perceptions of you, and you're going to have to make that adjustment. We need to make sure that our youth and our leaders that are coming up are prepared and ready to deal with that environment.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with it. I know Dr. James has to deal with it as well, especially in the military environment. You know, you're dealing with individuals who only barely hide how they really and truly feel about you. And now that they no longer, through the uh, uh, actions of people like Matt Gaetz from Florida again, uh, they are really actively trying to do away with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
Okay, so that position, the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, will no longer be included in the military.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so they feel that we do not need to have DEI in our military services anymore.
Wow.
So that is the type of environment we need to start preparing our leaders and in our future leaders of tomorrow to go into and be prepared to deal with that type of environment.
Awesome.
These guys are not, they're not going away. There's a term for it. It is called conservative counter revolution.
Wow.
Conservative counter revolution.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. They're trying to do any and everything that they can to go backwards in time. Counter revolutionize. It's called conservative counter revolution.
Wow.
That's what they're trying to do. DEI is just an example of it. Affirmative action is just another example of it. And they will use Sambos like Clarence Thomas to get it done.
Man, I'm telling you, you are dropping amazing dives over here on the Doc Chat Show. Dr. James, we're going to go right into it. Solutions. Give me 5 good minutes. What you got?
Solutions. So I'm reading the comments. I'm listening to Dr. Davis and Dr. Randolph, and I'm hearing one thing just keep echoing, and it's this ideology of going to when we mention HBCUs and saying, hey, look, it wasn't a realistic goal because it wasn't a real reflection of what society was. And so that's why a lot of people didn't do it. Let me be clear on my perspective on that. I went to a HBCU not because I didn't think that the reality of what society was going to be reflective of my education. I knew that that's not what society looked like. I grew up in the North. I grew up in the Bronx. I'm to immigrant parents. I understood what that corporate America looked like. What I didn't want is to be in an educational environment where I was one of one. You know what I'm saying? I did that throughout high school. I did that. I grew up in Catholic school. I come from I'm Generation X. Um, I am I am that generation of the 1970s, where I went to the Catholic schools and nobody else in the class looked like me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want my college experience to be that. I wanted to be in a space where I could think, where I could be, where I could just exist. And it wasn't looked at me to be the voice of all people that look like me. It wasn't looked at me to be the Webster's dictionary of everything black. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just exist in a place where I could be with people who had common thoughts, minds, ideas like myself. I think that in doing that, it made me understand whom I was, and what I was about. I had that space to actually learn about me, inside out, past, present, future. I was able to live in my truth, my narrative, my existence without the pressures of um, this isn't right, or you aren't good enough, or you're only here because I didn't. I saw that with my counterparts that went to PWIs. I saw them trying to live up to this image that others were putting on them because they were black and in a space that they quote unquote felt they shouldn't occupy. And I didn't have that issue at an HBCU. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved the family atmosphere. I loved the dynamics. But what it did give me was this thought process of, why must I adapt to your false narrative of how I should live, right? So this idea of deal with we have to deal with what's being dealt to us. It is exactly that. It's a false narrative. Truth be told, the dollar we hold is the greater dollar. You are absolutely right, Dr. Randolph. There is a fear. There is a big fear because we are the global majority. even though we are the racial minority. You understand what I'm saying? We also hold the highest monetary value, Black and brown people, in this country alone. However, we own nothing. We own nothing. Understand that. Our dollar is worth trillions. We own nothing. That is a problem.
Yeah, huge.
That is a major issue. And as long as we don't have financial power, we will never have political altitude, political power. We will never have that. So there will always be someone making the rules for how we govern our life.
Wow.
And they will never look like us.
Yeah.
So true.
Unbelievable. Hey.
The problem is, why do we feel that we should just have to adapt?
Yeah.
Because it's the way. The one thing, and I'm gonna preference this, my military people will understand this. The one thing that is my biggest pet peeve is, tell me we're doing something simply because that's the way we've always done it. Doesn't make it right. But if that is your reasoning, we're doing it simply because this is the way it's always been done. It is the biggest pet peeve of mine. But this is the reality in which we live in.
Yeah.
This is how it's always been. So this is how we're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
We can't change it because it's the way it's always been. At what point do we start to put our foot down and say, okay, well, we have to change our. I tell my kids all the time, change your circle, change your circumstances, change your mentality, change your life. We need to get into that same principle. Since being on your platform, I have met more Black and brown and beautiful doctors of minority, quote unquote, diaspora than anywhere else. It's time that we start shifting our narrative. It's time that we start refocusing how we're seen. Because if we can change narrative, we can change societal views. If we can change societal views, we can change laws.
Oh, that's good stuff. Good stuff. We appreciate you. Appreciate you, Dr. James. Dr. Randolph, and we're going to go a little bit of overtime here, so it's all good because I want to make sure you get your time now. Solutions, and also just for the sake of time, once you get done, let us all know where we can find you at as we wrap up.
Gotcha. And so a lot of my sentiments do echo Dr. James's. However, the educational and the upbringing, we're an exact reciprocal of one another. She's from the Bronx. I'm from Chicago. Bronx is part of New York, so it's the largest city in the U.S., and I'm from the third largest city in the U.S. However, I did not grow up in a racially suppressive educational environment. I did go to Catholic school, though. But I went to a Black Catholic school. Like, the minority people there were white. And then when I went to Whitney M. Young Magnet High School, at least 50% of our student body there or more was Black. And this was the number two high school in the state, and consistently ranks in the top 50 in the country. I had a Black principal. She just retired last year. They're on their fourth principal in the 45 years or something they've been in existence, and all have been Black. Wow. And that staggering number of Black male educators that we see now, where 1% or less than 2% of male educators are Black. When I heard that, I was greatly surprised because that, again, was not my story. My first grade teacher was Black. My sixth grade, there were two teachers for sixth grade. One of them he was a Black male. We did 2 classes with him. The music teacher, who was also our choir director, was Black. The art teacher was Black, right? And so my push for PWI, and I want people to understand that this whole HBCU PWI conversation that we're having, it's not a competition. And I highlight my experiences to show that both Dr. James and I are doctors. We're both women. We're both Black. We're both from major cities. But because of how we matriculated to the point of the college experience, it shaped which college experience we chose to have. She was in I'm gonna call it a repressive environment for the first 18 years, been around people who did not look like herself. And so she chose to go to an environment where there were nothing, or the majority of people looked like her, where she felt embraced. On the other hand, I had that in my entire life. I came from a larger family. I'm the oldest of 8. I went to a Black church, right? I was Black. I knew I was Black. I was good in being Black. I was very, very comfortable in being Black. And so my decision, again, in addition to the accreditation and the programs that I was looking for, was because I was secure enough in who I am. You couldn't dissuade me. You could not convince me to amalgamate myself. I would never be affluent enough that you thought I wasn't anything but unapologetically Black. And being in that environment caused me to have to face some racial turmoil. When I served as president of NPHC, which is the council that governs the historically non-Black fraternities and sororities, there was an article put in one of the papers that slandered a particular sorority, which happened to be mine, stating that we vandalized their property. And it had already been determined that no one who was a student of the University of Missouri, and I conducted the investigation myself, was involved. Therefore, we banded together like Black folks did. It didn't matter which letters we held. We were sitting on the steps at 4 o'clock in the morning of Jesse Hall, even though the vice chancellor for student affairs called me that weekend on a Saturday after I was leaving a board meeting trying to talk me down. I was like, well, we can meet with you tomorrow if they're available, but understand we're still going to be sitting on Jesse's steps, because this problem isn't just a conversation you're brushing under the carpet. And so I want people to understand that the HBCU, PWI conversation, it expounds so much further than just, I want to go to school with Black people, or I don't want to go to school with Black people, right? That's like not even it. But also, so in terms of solutions, and I'm going to go ahead and rollerblade into that, one of the solutions we're going to have to use as a Black community is expanding the infrastructure of our HBCUs. When I decided, I started a PhD program, and I have no problem telling I will tell the world this story very soon. The first PhD program that I applied to, I got accepted. I started the program. I got 5 classes in, excuse me. My allergies are bothering me, you all. And because of health reasons, I failed a couple of courses. Well, that drops your GPA. When you don't have a certain GPA, you don't get financial aid. And so, it became cast aside. Several years later, as I reinvigorated the yearning to finish what I started, because I don't like not finishing things that I started, and I decided I didn't want to go back to that particular institution, I looked at HBCU programs. The problem then was they had no online program. There was no HBCU in the country that had the program at that point that I was looking for. What I have my doctorate in subsequently got changed by God. But nevertheless, I don't think any HBCU has that program either, right? And so that thrust me into the point of, because I was a working adult who had a mortgage, I wasn't paying rent somewhere, whole mortgage. Wells Fargo would not have cared if I had up and moved to DC to go to Howard to pursue, my education, or to go to Greensboro, to go to NC. No. And so I had to make a decision that was prudent to my circumstances, both currently and in the future. Therefore, if we're going to truly be not just competitive with PWIs and other institutions, we are going to have to, and I see there are schools doing it. Edward Waters in Florida, not that I think anybody should go to Florida, but Edward Waters in Florida has just, been upgraded, both their academics as well as their Division II in sports. And so we're going to have to upgrade these infrastructures so that we're offering not just more competitive things such as sports. And that's one thing Deion Sanders did for Jackson State. It showed that we can play just like the rest of them. So put us in these Division I categories where we can then have people who are coming, because what happens then is once we show them we can, and ESPN is hosting your football game every week, or it's on ABC or NBC or ESPN2 or the SEC channel, then that generates revenue. And that revenue kicks back to the university. And so these are things we're going to have to cognizantly do in those academic spaces, is increase that infrastructure. Another thing we have to do, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, but it's worth repeating, recycle our Black dollars. When at all possible, I try to help support Black-owned businesses. Now, that being said, to all of you out there who are business owners, I'm saying this, I am a business owner, okay? We got to be more professional. Let's call a spade, and let's put it out there. I have had too many encounters, and I've had too many other people say to me who are Black, I try to support Black-owned businesses. I want to support Black-owned businesses, but then there are these destructive tenants that are deployed and sprinkled throughout. You charge more, you have an attitude, you open late, you're not professional. And so then you take those persons like myself and all of the rest of you all who are attending tonight, who have that disposable income, who might have that upper echelon of Black dollar, and you turn us away. And you make us skeptical to wanting to support our own people. So that's multi-layered, right? We first have to want to support our own people. But then our people have to give us the respect back, because our money can go anywhere. And that person can be your cousin. Let's be very clear. Mom, dad, cousin, nobody gets to pass. You have to be professional. If you send me an email and you're asking me to do a consult for you, I'm not responding back to you all like, hey, what's up? No, that's not what we're doing here. That's not why we're here. Also, we have to teach our own history. And I'm looking at my notes here, and that's the last point that I had in terms of, solutions. Dr. Davis mentioned it. He talked about learning centers, and it goes beyond learning centers. And I'm going to pick here on the Black church for just a minute, because apparently I'm fairly decent at doing that. Historically, Black churches were that gap filler. We were the place where children could go to learn. They could have their activity programs. They helped fund money to start. They were the epicenter of our culture. And so the first insurance businesses were started there, the first educational businesses. A lot of these HBCUs were founded at church. But when you ask the population today, they find that there is a huge defunct deficit in the role that the church plays, which means we have this gap that goes unmet. And it's not just a financial gap, it's an educational gap. We have to teach our kids from inception who they are, teach them the truth, because the world is going to not teach them the truth. And if we leave it up to the world is going to eradicate the truth. I recall talking to someone I worked with. She was a younger white girl, and I was just telling her some things. And she said, no, I never knew that. And then she says to me, well, how do you all learn these things or just know these things? Do you just know because you learned it in school? She knew I was educated. Do you know just because you learned in school? Or do you guys teach, do you teach your people this? And I said, it's both. I am educated because of the education that I've obtained. I'm educated because I continuously learn. But these are things we teach in our homes, and we cannot allow the next generation to forget the truth. Maybe Till Mobley said when she decided to have an open casket burial for Emmett Till, and people tried to dissuade and discourage her, she said, no, it must be open casket, because the world must see. They must see what they did to my baby. And we have to do the same things in our home. The world must see. Your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and your nephews must know what they did to us. Final component, I'm sorry. In telling our narrative and our stories, there's something that we don't do. We don't offer academic and sociological and psychological critiques of our own institutions. Far too many times, they are critiqued by mainstream media and not by us. The book that I just released shows that in research, the Black church as a Black conglomerate has never been critiqued by us. It's always critiqued by an outside lens. How do you get to critique me on what I've been doing my whole life? A lot of our organizations, especially our social and our civic organizations, when you look at the NCNW, the SCLC, Rainbow AACP, 100 Black Men, these organizations exist because at their very foundation, and our Black fraternities and sororities, more especially, we exist because white people wouldn't let us be a part. They didn't have, there was no organization in 1909, the NAACP was founded, that was advocating for the civil rights and equality of Black people. So what did? We had to create our own. When Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity was founded in 1906 at Cornell University, it was started as a study group. Why? Because they were Black men on a predominantly white campus, and white folks didn't want them there. I'm astutely and acutely aware that I belong to a Black sorority. Now, that's the thing I got right. I've gone to conferences with white people in the Black sororities, and I had to ask why and how, because that just didn't make sense to me. I don't want to go and be a part of something you never intended or wanted me to be a part of. My God-given right. Now, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and to be treated fair and equal, take that right all day long. But I don't need to intercept myself in some nuanced social club that has a diluted and disconcerted imagery of who and what they think I should be. And so we have to make sure that the Black infrastructures globally, forget just the US, because we've had someone on here who earlier was from the Bahamas. Dr. James, where did you say your parents immigrated from?
Jamaica.
Okay, she's from Jamaica. I mean, I'm from the south side of Chicago, but clearly, if you go back 350 years, that's not what you're going to find out. The continent of Africa, the second most populous continent in the world. Europe, that caused the whole colonialization of the globe, is at the bottom. It only the only two continents that have fewer people are Australia and Antarctica. And so you have this one continent that decided to go the rest of the world. And so, our Black dollars are powerful. And it's not just, I want us to understand that the Black dollar isn't just the US Black dollar. It's the Black dollar in Uganda that is the most financially highest performing country in the continent of Africa. It is the opportunities that our celebrities have to go invest in the African infrastructure and get into electricity, supply safe water, internet connections. All of those things are yet to be fully actualized on the continent in every aspect of it, as it is more so in the developed nations. Our money has power. We have to learn to use it, and we have to learn to respect it. In terms of where you can find me, because I know you want me to hush, you can find me on LinkedIn at Dr. Candicia Randolph. You'll see two accounts. Either of them is me. One is a specific author account, so you're going to want to pick the one that has my actual picture on LinkedIn, Candicia Randolph. Again, there's an author page, Dr. Candicia Randolph. Follow me there for information about the book. Facebook, same deal, Candicia Randolph. Via email, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can find that. Oh, there's one last thing. The book that I mentioned earlier is called, because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm sitting here making up history about the Osage and
She's frozen.
It's about how the U.S. Infiltrated and plotted against the women of the Osage Nation to then steal their land and their head titles, which was their inheritance, and now how they're having to buy it back.
Okay. What was the name of the book again? One more time. Make sure we get
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Okay. Gotcha.
And the author is David Grann, Grann.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's Dr. Randolph, folks. We appreciate y'all for hanging out with us. 2 hours of power, I'm telling you right now. We're going to go over to Dr. James. Let us know where folks can find you, and one final thought.
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Anika Ayana James, spelled just like it's pronounced, Dr. Anika Ayana James. My email is also on my LinkedIn page. You can pretty much find everything about me on my LinkedIn page. And keep in mind, we'll start kicking off Just Narrative first Saturday in September. So I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully by then we'll have the book out. So y'all pray for me. I don't know. I'm a glutton for punishment.
You're all good. All good. And Dr. Lawrence Davis, where can folks find you at?
Okay, everybody can reach me at LinkedIn, of course, and is exactly Dr. Lawrence Davis. Email also. I'm always checking my email, and my LinkedIn account is associated with my email account, so I'm available that way. And it was an engaging conversation tonight, and I look forward to the next one.
We appreciate you. Dr. Davis, Dr. James, and Dr. Randolph. This is just how we do on the Doc Chat, folks. We bring real minds. We have real conversations. We let the doctors make that movement happen. That's what's happening. Thank y'all so much. Everybody that tuned in, everybody that commented, we appreciate y'all. We'll be back next Thursday. And as always, as we go out, we say peace out.